Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Business. As always, we have Rocco Cozza joining me today. Rocco, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Really appreciate it.
I'm excited to dive into this. So why don't you tell people what it is that you do? So if someone was to meet you in a bar and go, hey Rocco, what do you do? How do you spend your time? How would you answer that?
That's a great question. What I always tell people is I happen to be an entrepreneur that practices law for a living. So I'm a lawyer by trade, actually a business lawyer. But along the way, I've started, owned, and operated, 10 to 12 other businesses. I'm also an author. I'm a speaker. I've done a TEDx talk and a bunch of other large speaking engagements. And I help people as a business coach really develop themselves as an entrepreneur or really expand and grow their businesses. So I kind of do a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
My main focus is my law practice with all these other pieces just I've put together along the way.
So was law something you were always into from when you were younger, or did you sort of fall into it? What was that journey like?
Yeah, that's interesting. So when I was a kid, I was really into entrepreneurship. I was the kid that, sold lemonade, sold baseball cards. I was always into business. I also liked to argue and debate people. So when I was growing up through middle school and high school, I decided, I think I want to be a lawyer. And I went to college. I went to one of the best pre-law schools here in the United States to getting people into law school. But when I was in undergrad, I majored in psychology. And at the time, I was debating between law school or getting a PhD in psychology. Into my senior year, I let fate decide. I took the GREs instead of the LSATs and said, okay, if I get into grad school for psychology, I'm meant to be a psychologist. If I don't, I'm meant to be a lawyer. Well, I got waitlisted, took a year off, took the LSATs, went to law school, and the rest is history. And it was, I think it was my path that I was supposed to be on because I always looked at being a lawyer as a means to an end. I never wanted to be just a lawyer. Yeah. It always gave me something to fall back on. It always gave me a leg up in business, but I didn't want to be known as a 70-year-old partner in a large law firm.
Yeah.
That wasn't my path.
Yeah, it seemed like you sort of dove into one direction knowing that if you got in, you got in. If not, then you had something to fall back on. Is this something that has maybe happened before, whereby you've committed to one direction knowing full well that you could go down the other direction had that one not come off?
Yeah, I've kind of always lived my life that way, honestly. I've never done just one thing. So I've always liked to diversify my skill sets, my income, my businesses, because I tend to go really hard and fast down a path until I figure out it's not the right path, then I change course very quickly. And I've always been able to really be self-aware to know before I get too far down a path in a business, in a profession, and just anything where I'm able to course correct very quick.
What's the difference then between course correcting and just like pivoting as soon as things get hard? Like, how do you sort of balance that out between I'm going to keep going because this is something I really want to do versus hang on, maybe it isn't something I want to do and maybe
Sure.
it should probably change?
No, that's a great question. And it's I think one, you have to understand that no matter what path you take, it's always going to be hard. So coming up against resistance should not make anyone course correct. You course correct when you realize you don't either have a passion for it, you don't understand it well enough, nor have the interest to understand it well enough, or it just doesn't make sense anymore. And you kind of get that internal gut feeling that this just doesn't make sense. Difficulty or when something's hard, that should never be the indicator to course correct, because anything worth doing in life is going to be difficult. You've got to be able to look at those other things and say, okay, I'm not passionate about it, I don't get it, or it just doesn't feel right. That's when I would course correct a different direction.
Would the fact that it is hard, or at least it feels hard, like you can do a lot of stuff, but it still doesn't feel hard. So how could being like something feeling hard be a sign that maybe you're not passionate about it? Because the amount of people that I know and I've interviewed a bit like yourself, they go, well, I do a ton of stuff, but it still doesn't feel hard with someone that might only work for say 4 to 5 hours a day and go, this is tough, like I can't do this. So is hard ever a sign that the passion's not there or the energy's not there about the idea? So maybe that's like a a telltale sign perhaps that you should change.
Well, so you know, I don't know that I agree with that, because I look at it, you know, passion and difficulty, I don't necessarily think they go hand in hand. I think that if you're not passionate about something, it'll always seem difficult.
Yeah.
However, if something is hard, that doesn't mean you're not passionate about it. And when I say, I use the term hard and difficult as two different things. Hard doesn't mean it just takes work. There's resistance, it takes work. It's not difficult or complex. It's just a lot of work, a lot of things you have to do. Difficult is, I can't figure this out. I don't get it. I don't have the passion or the fortitude to push forward to try and get it. When things get difficult, that may be a sign that there isn't a passion enough to figure it out.
Right. So it's almost like if you're prepared to find a way or create a way of doing
Right.
it, then that's okay. If you're prepared to put the effort in, so to speak. But if things are just difficult just because you've got a lot to do, then you've just got a lot to do. And then that's
Right.
kind of like the barrier of entry, if you will, for doing whatever it is that you're doing. Like someone like yourself who's a speaker and you have your own show and you do this, that, and the other thing, you have a lot of stuff to do. So it's
Yeah.
hard, right? It can
Yeah,
be hard
exactly.
at times to do a lot of stuff, but it's not like outside of your remit of I will figure it out.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's, you know, everything's going to be hard. There's always going to be stuff to do. If you're an entrepreneur, it's not easy. I tell my clients this all the time. If you, you know, if you go down the road of entrepreneurship thinking it's going to be easy and you're going to be living that lifestyle on the beach without having to go through difficult or hard stuff, you're clueless, because it takes time. It takes work. I mean, to get where I am took 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an easy thing.
20 years of doing a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
which doesn't make it difficult. It doesn't make it under your kind of figure outableness, if you will, of
Yeah.
trying to figure out a way of doing it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of stuff you had to do. It's just a lot of stuff that's happening in the background when no one's watching, when the kids are in bed, when, you know, my friends are out partying, I'm there just doing the work. And when you do that over time, that's how you become successful. But a lot of people aren't willing to give up those things to do the thing they need to do.
So what would you say to someone then that is maybe getting this mixed up, maybe getting this idea of I'm doing a lot? Does that mean that I've lost passion for it? Does that mean that I shouldn't do this anymore because it feels hard? And then we're here talking about no, it's just you're doing a lot of stuff and
Yeah.
that's okay. Like it's when it starts to go down the road of I don't really want to do this anymore, not just because it's hard, but because you don't want to do it anymore, then
Yeah.
that's a little bit different. But how would you have this conversation with someone that's listening that might be thinking, well, I don't know how to really parse the two?
Well, the first thing I always do, and I have this discussion with clients, the first thing I say is, what are you actually doing? Because a lot of times people, you know, tend to think they're losing that passion, but when you break down what they're doing, they're actually not doing anything that matters. So they're not even really doing what they need to do to figure it out. So of course they're going to lose that passion because they feel like they're clueless or helpless, because they're just doing a lot of stuff that has no long-term benefit in the end, or it's busy, not productive. It's those types of tasks. You know, you got to, I always say, you know, with a business, I have one client that, you know, had this problem. They just were just like, I want to give up because I'm doing all this stuff, but nothing's working. So maybe he's not passionate about this. When I really broke it down with this person, all the stuff they were doing didn't matter, because the one thing they needed to do was to connect with clients and sell and be that front facing person to really pull the customers in they weren't doing. And that was the thing they were passionate about. But they thought they had to do all this other stuff, these Facebook ads, this marketing, all these other things they were spending all their time doing. And then they started feeling this discontent or this disconnect with what they were actually supposed to be doing. Once we broke it down and pulled back the curtain, we figured it out. And then they re-engaged with the stuff they should be doing that was still hard, and that passion came back. So a lot of times it's people figuring out if they're doing the right things.
Is it a case of being self-aware then to find out what those right things are?
Oh, absolutely. Self-aware. Then I also believe, and this is why I believe in the coaching process. I'm a coach, but I work with a coach because sometimes we can't see what we can't see. It takes a third party to look at us from the outside or look at what we're doing from the outside to identify those things. That's why I've worked with a coach for years. That's why I coach people. It's an important part of the process. Every professional athlete has a coach because you can't see the whole field. You need someone else to take that step back and say, okay, here's some things I see that you're not doing or should be doing. But yeah, you do have to have that self-awareness, but it's also, you need that higher level viewpoint from someone else.
So when do you ever stop to, I don't know, I guess be more self-aware? Do you have practices that are designed for this? Or is it something that you sort of go off like a moment by moment, feeling by feeling basis?
Yeah, I mean, I myself, I think, have built so much intuition, self-awareness over the years with the mistakes I've made and the failures I've had. When you fail a lot, like I have, and make a lot of mistakes, you become very self-aware of when you're kind of going off path. And I think that's why I think failure is so important, and making mistakes is so important. And people look at them, as a negative, but I always tell people, that's part of the process. That's how you build that self-awareness. The more times I fail, the easier it is for me to look at a situation and know if I'm on the right path or not. Because I take all those experiences from the past and it helps me build that self-awareness.
Do you ever find that it is in failures? Because you've mentioned a lot in terms of like direction shifts and course corrections because of, it feels, at least to me, that you actually guide yourself through the failures, because it's like you know that something then needs to change, or like you don't go that way. It's almost like you only really find out what you want to do by tasting enough and realizing what you don't actually want to do.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I think that's a lot of people's problem. They don't try enough. They don't fail enough. They're so afraid of failure that they never push themselves to what they could become. They get very comfortable in their box and they say, okay, I've done this, it's good enough. And they never push themselves outside that box or try the things they really want to try because of the fear of failure. But the more you fail, the more success you achieve in life. That's my firm belief.
I quite like the way you mentioned that, like the more you fail, the more success you'll have. It's because I think, like, I mean, you get this a lot, and the more conversations I'm having, it's like people won't change anything if they don't know what it is that they should be changing. And if they never really fail, they never find out what that is. Like there's no element of, okay, well, I'll do something different. And sometimes the box can be created because we don't do anything different. And I mean, it's weird. It's weird when you have the conversation with people because you actually watch their head move and start to actually change and pulsate mid-conversation sometimes. It's like, look, like if you never change, then the box is either self-created or it's been given to you that you've molded in. One of the funny things I saw the other day was a horse that's got a rope attached to like a plastic chair, right? And it was like, well, he's been attached to that chair since he couldn't move it.
Yep.
And now he's a massive horse. He still thinks he can't move it because he's never been able to move it, because at the time he was too small to move it, where now he's not. But he still thinks he can't. So how important do you feel this idea of being conditioned to learn, or learn about ourselves or our situation, or learn that we are capable of achieving something, of pushing that box? How important do you think that side of conditioning is?
Well, I mean, when you say conditioning, I mean, I think we all have to understand that there's so much more that's possible, right? Kind of, I want to go back to the point of the success and failure dichotomy. So I look at that as, in the way I like to explain it to people is, when you look at life, right, there's light and dark, there's good and bad. I always say success and failure is like the yin and yang. the more failure you have, the bigger the success is. But people have to be able to learn and understand that. And part of that, like you said, that conditioning is, and I think sometimes people are conditioned poorly, or they stop learning when they're done with school. Life is a process of growth, right? I mean, you're growing or dying. You never stay the same in life. That's something that I've learned over the years. And I think the more you grow as a person, the more you learn, the more you expand your horizons, get out of your comfort zone, the more things you can achieve in life. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. That's part of the process, but you've got to condition yourself differently, I guess I would put it, to understand that those roadblocks, those failures, those mistakes, you have to have them if you want the greater life. Too many people are afraid to have them.
Yeah, I feel like it is the experiences that do change, isn't it? Whether they're good experiences or bad, but particularly after talking
Mm-hmm.
to yourself today, is it tends to be it's the negative ones that give us a bigger reason to do things differently.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost like it almost confirms things if we have good experiences. So it kind
Yeah.
of so that if you have a very very good day,
Yeah.
right? Have a good day, yeah, awesome. Get up, do it
Yep.
again. But if you have a bad day, let's say you got caught up in traffic or whatever, you're like, okay, well
Mm-hmm.
next time, right? Tomorrow, I will do something different. I'll leave earlier. I'll
Yep.
maybe not drive so aggressive so I won't get caught up, or whatever it happens to be, right? You sort of pick the strategy there. But like,
Exactly
if
right.
it's almost like if people have a good day, they just kind of waddle into the next day and they don't think they really need to do anything different. And then when you say, oh well, you actually achieve more if you fail.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like there's a bit of a miseducation around failure then, that like
Absolutely.
you need to start encouraging people to fail more, even if it's a small thing at first, and then you start to build to the bigger things? I mean, that's how I sort of look at it. What are your take on it?
I completely agree. And I think the best way to describe it is like working out, right? When you're lifting weights, the whole way to grow a muscle is to break it down and push it to failure. That's how you tear those muscle tissues and they rebuild stronger.
Yeah.
Same thing with what you're talking about. If everything's okay and easy, I just live an okay and easy, mediocre life. It's when I have those challenges, those failures, those screw ups. It's like, okay, I just tore things down. Now I have to rebuild them stronger. I can go back from the beginning of my career with real estate investing, business investing, everything I've done. All the mistakes I've made have built me to where I am today. I've learned from them. I've grown from them. I see things differently. I do things differently. If I wouldn't have made those mistakes, I'd probably be 20 steps behind where I am right now in life. But you're right. We miseducate people.
Do you
I think.
think that's something to do with like how things like when people think about education, think about
Mm-hmm.
schools, right, and
Yeah.
colleges and all that sort of thing? Would you say that tends to be where it all starts?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I believe even sometimes parenting, like I will say this, I feel very lucky because I was parented a way that I think helped lead me to the success I had. My mother, single mom raised me. It was until she married my stepfather, but she always said to me, I don't care what you do in life, as long as you always give it your best, no matter how many times you fell, and you be the best. She's like, if you want to be a garbage man, a landscaper, a lawyer, a doctor, she's like, you give 100% to that profession, no matter how many mistakes you make or times you fail, and you become the best at it. And so that gave me the permission to fail.
Yeah,
It,
I
it
like that.
wasn't, it wasn't, and I remember even, I was a good, straight A student, tested, high IQ when I was young. I remember my sophomore year of high school, I brought home a C. My first C of my entire life in honors biology. And my mother didn't get mad at me. What she said to me, she's like, well, if that's the best you can do and you're a C student, then I'll accept that. Will you accept that?
Mm.
And in that simple statement made me realize, holy crap, like, no, that's not who I am. You know, it was okay for me to have that moment of failure.
Yeah.
She wasn't mad about it. And she used that moment to challenge me, to say to me, if that's the best you are, then I'll accept that. But ask yourself that question.
I think it's crazy how rare that is.
Yeah,
Like,
I completely agree. I mean, that's what I do with my kids now. Like I always, I'm encouraging them, try, make mistakes. That's how you get better. I'm never going to be mad at them if they take a risk and fail. I'll be mad at them if they never live to their full potential.
I mean, it's a difficult conversation to have because, like, are we not allowed to be unhappy about the way that we do things, or are other people not allowed? I guess it's a difficult conversation to have because we all have our own like reactions to things. If you do your best and you're a C, well, you want to try and disconnect the effort from the result in that case because
Right.
if the best that you do is a C, you'll always think that you're a failure, even though C is probably good enough for whatever it is that you really want to do with that thing. So sometimes you've got to, I mean, this is just me talking out loud. I've got my own gripes about the education system, but like if I feel like as long as you do what you do and you do it as best as you can, then what other people think of it doesn't really matter. But having said that, like the whole system's built around that thing. And then when I have conversations with people and say, look, you're allowed to just as long as you're happy with your results and you're happy with whatever it is that you're doing, so am I. And I get funny looks, right, Rocco? I get crazy
Yep.
looks. They go, what? You mean like you're happy if I don't do anything? Yeah. And it's like, well, you want to find something that you actually want to do then,
Right.
because if you're asking that question of so it doesn't matter if I don't do this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you probably shouldn't be doing this thing. Like, you could probably pick something that you're actually a bit passionate about being good at it,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll do more. Then because it's almost like if you fulfill your own expectations, then you'll automatically fulfill theirs if it's the right thing.
No, exactly. And to going back to that statement of my mom about the C, like I knew that was I didn't give my best. Like if I left everything on the field and gave 100% and that's what I got, then you're right. The result is disconnected from the actions. You know, I
Yeah,
did the best. The result is what it is. I knew in that moment I didn't. That's not who I was. I didn't put in the effort I could have, and that was the last C I ever got.
yeah. I think there's got to be this. It's strange because the amount of people that again I do it all the time. Like I'm pretty big on do the best that you can, and
Yep.
as long as you're happy about it, then I'm happy about it. And some people don't even want to hear that. So some people don't want to have that conversation. They want me to give them the standard. They want me to give them like the field to play in, so to speak. And so, well, no, because you could be in a completely different realm. You could need a bigger box than what I put you in. So when you think about it that way, like people need to be self-aware as we sort of go back to what we were saying before, because this is what sort of creates the expectation, doesn't it? Like if you know that you're built to be an entrepreneur and you know that you're built to do these things and you're built to work hard, i.e. do a lot of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
without it being like dispassionate or whatever it is, you're more likely to actually be good at that thing as well. Because if you do a lot of something that you're passionate about, i.e., you'll
Yep.
be spending more time on the thing, you'll probably be a bit more picky with how it looks. You'll probably, do a bit of like behind the scenes. I mean, I
Yep.
always use the analogy of when I used to play basketball for my
Mm-hmm.
university, which is college in the US. For those of you that are listening in the US, is like I used to get my kit ready for like a 6 a.m. run
Mm-hmm.
the night before. I'd make sure I get enough sleep because the university was about an hour away. So I'd have to get up early enough to get there for 6 o'clock run. And I'd have to be ready, otherwise I'd never get out the door early enough to drive there to do the run, to then drive back or stay for like classes or seminars or whatever it was. And
Yep.
then I would train and then I'd do basketball training that evening and then I'd come back. And it's like sometimes it's the level of excitement and the things that you do behind the scenes that's like the telltale sign you should
Exactly.
probably be doing the thing. Like if all you want to do is sit there and, write the blog and that's it, then
Hmm.
okay. But if you want to write the blog, do the pictures, take the pictures, go out and, maybe do some research, make sure they're good pictures, like promote it, tell people about it because you're excited about it, you're probably going to be better at it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's why I always say it's what you do when no one's watching is what matters and what tells you everything.
I like that.
It's because it's the truth. I mean, entrepreneurship's a lonely game. I mean, it's very lonely, and it's 90% of what you do is in the background. And if you're not doing that, then you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. You shouldn't be pursuing that. I look at, people think like my friends. A lot of my friends work in corporate America. They look at me as, I'm an entrepreneur. I get to do what I want. I travel. I live my life. So they think I have this glamorous life, right? Because I don't have a boss. I can just go and be and work from coffee shops. I'm like, yeah, but you guys don't see the 16 hours I'm putting in on a Saturday and Sunday, creating content, researching things. You don't see all the behind the scenes stuff that is leading me to that. And that's, I think, that the big thing, the big problem people have is they expect this one thing, this lifestyle, but they're not willing to do what it takes in the background. Therefore, they shouldn't be doing it. And you're right. That's when you know it's a passion, or when you should be doing it, when you're willing to do the crap you need to do, when no one is looking, when it's not glamorous, when you get zero recognition for it. That's when it matters. And that's the true telltale sign.
I feel like just from hearing everything that you're saying and me sort of bouncing off what you're saying is this is like the same destination, I guess, but you're coming at it from two different sides.
Yeah.
There's the coming at it from like the pure sort of, the outside almost. You're coming at it from the outside in, and then you've got from the inside out. Like you either want to be, it's a form of motivation, isn't it? Are you motivated by like the internal stuff, like what you're passionate about, what you enjoy, what you're prepared to spend a lot of time on? Or are you motivated by, the standards that other people have set, the accolades or the awards or the stuff, right? And I feel like ideally you want a bit of both, because
exactly right.
If you don't get anything external, then it's almost like you don't have a lot to feed the internal with. Like enjoyment very rarely lasts forever.
100% agree. And too many people, I think, they feed you this BS. Well, it shouldn't be about external things. Look, everybody, it's human nature to want the recognition of others and to want that external motivation and the internal. And you're right. When you don't get the external, it's hard to keep the internal fire burning. The internal fire, that's important, but I think the external does feed it. I like nice things. I like to be able to do these external things and have this external recognition. That drives the internal. But I think too many people lie to themselves saying, I'm not doing it for anybody else. That's BS. We're all doing it on some level for the external motivations.
Yeah, I think it's more about, do you feel good about what you're motivated by as well?
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Like for instance, I am quite motivated externally. That's only because I started off so fired up internally that it needs a lot to keep the fire going,
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like when you think about it that way, as long as you're happy with what motivates you, it doesn't really matter what it is. Like, there are people out there that are like, oh, well, if you want the car, then you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. It's like, well, what if that's the only thing they really spend their money on? Like, what if that's, well, what if they're like, their thing, right, is cars?
Yep.
Who are we to judge that they like cars? It's the same with people that like going on holidays. Like I, as you know, I live somewhere where a lot of people would probably come on holiday, and that means that my holidays have to be different, right? Like I can't go on a holiday for a beach because I'm about 20-minute walk from one.
Right.
And it's that it changes when you've got stuff. It changes your motivation straight away.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because I realized this recently. So as of recording this, things will be very different by the time this goes out. So just be wary if you're listening.
Yeah.
is like when you think about it,
Hmm.
it's the external stuff that actually keeps the internal stuff going, as we said. And recently, I've realised that I've been getting a bit of a shortage of external, right?
Okay.
So to put it another way, when I moved on my own.
Hmm.
So I lost the kind of support network, if you will, from friends and family. There was no kind of, oh, you'll be all right, keep going, or how's Mike doing, and all those things. There was not a
Hmm.
lot of that side of things going on. And having said that, I also used to I used to be a lot of contributions to magazines. And a few years ago, I won an award as a business owner, right? So
Hmm.
I got I got recognition for that, and it's been about what 3 years now, maybe a bit further, and I've had about a full year where I've had nothing. So then
Yeah.
it was like, over time, started off fine, keep going, it's fine, just keep plodding through, keep achieving the things that you want, and keep going, and you enjoy it. So, right, so it's almost like we get fed this lie of you enjoy it, so you should be able to keep going on enjoyment and fulfillment alone. And I think that's a difficult story to keep playing. I know, because I played
It
it for a
is.
full year. So it's something that you can do
Hmm.
in the medium term. This is a thing where people tend to miss out. Like short term, piece of cake.
Yep.
Medium term, you do all right. But
Yep.
people miss out the medium term stuff. People tend to miss out this. Like, okay, well, if you fail in the short term, you might win in the long term. Yeah, but what about this magical thing in the middle called the medium term? Like, how do you actually sustain
Exactly.
yourself? Whether it's through failure, because we've got a big theme on failure at the moment, and you've got to sustain yourself. Like, because then when people think long term, people think like when they finish, like that's like long term for them. So
Right.
no, like that's not long term. That's like finished. You shouldn't base your goals and your life, your level of fulfillment or success or whatever it is
Hmm.
based on when you've finished,
Right.
because you need something to tick some of your boxes on the way there. Whether that is, if you can afford your dream car, then that
Yeah.
should be something that you want to get, because that's something that's motivating you and showing you a sign that
Yep.
you are actually on the right path. And it's a difficult one because the path can be yours or it can be somebody else's. But what are your thoughts on that? And is there a way of knowing whether the path is really yours or whether it's somebody else's?
Well, so I agree with you on the X. Like the internal motivation gets you so far. What I would say is ask a person to write their 10 goals down, their 10 life goals or 10 yearly goals, and see how many of those goals are internal. And that'll tell you a big part of the picture, right? If, very rarely do you see people, I want to feel happy. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel passionate. I want a car. I want a house. I want $1,000,000 in the bank. There's these external goals. So they do play a large part in success and motivation. And when people say that should all come from internal, I think that's just a crock of crap. I mean, for the lack of a better term, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, you can have, like you said, you can have that internal motivation drive you for a short period of time. But if you're not pushing yourself towards something external, it's very hard. And I think, everybody's path is different. You're right, 100%. And I don't know that there's a way to tell somebody how to identify that path other than understanding. You have to understand yourself, know what you want in life. I know myself, right? I have internal motivators and I have external motivators. I I look at where I came from against where I am right now, and I'm extremely happy with that, but I'm not happy enough. Like I want more. Like this is a checkpoint for me in life. I want to be more fulfilled. I want to be more passionate. I want to have better things, nicer things, more travels, more money. So I always look at spots in my life as checkpoints on the internal and the external. I think each person just has to understand what drives them. It's hard. What drives you and what drives me are two different things. And I think I couldn't tell you how to make sure your path is right. And you couldn't tell me, right? I mean, it's an individualistic thing. It's just, we have to take that time and kind of dissect what really drives us. What has driven me my entire life is I came from very humble beginnings, low middle class family, went on, I think, 1 or 2 vacations in my entire childhood. From the time I was born till I was 18 years old, like 2 vacations that were actually like I would consider vacations, like a week. I knew I wanted a different life. I wanted to travel when I wanted, provide that for my kids, drive a nice car, live in a big house. I also wanted to feel passionate and intense about what I was doing. So it was a combination of internal and external motivations, but I had to figure that out for myself. No one told me how to do that. I just figured it out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like we need to have more of this, like allowing people to find their own way? Like it's easier if you do it when you're younger, but then it's almost like we're given a lot of the information from people that, for want of a better expression, they have a vested interest in you going their way.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a problem. People should be able to find their own path, because you're right. People do have certain vested interests in where people go. And I think too, we need to give people permission to live how they want. I think the problem we have today is society, makes people feel certain ways, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't want a Lamborghini. Like, that's ridiculous. Why would you need that? People say these things, and it gets in people's head, and it holds people back. I think especially, when you come from certain types of families or certain types of socioeconomic statuses, people have those stigmas or those societal norms or rules they follow. Well, I don't need all of that. No one needs a Lamborghini. No one needs a 10,000 square foot house. But guess what? I want one. And it's going to be awesome when I get one. And no one's going to tell me otherwise. But again, I had to give myself permission to do that, to think that way. And that's where I think a lot of people have that problem. They get in these circles of people that don't give them permission to think that way. So they get stuck in that level and they never move from that level.
Do you ever find that, this sort of talks to as we age, right?
Yeah.
So like as we get older, we see what's out there, we see what's possible, and become less and less tied to our past, right? Instead of a bit of a funny joke is the midlife crisis, right? Like we get to a point where we think, I'm gonna do what I want. I'm at a certain age now. This is it. I am just gonna buy the sports car, and very cliche, Rocco, to be fair.
But no, I've done it though. I've done it, so I get it.
Oh, funny. This might be mine. This moves to the country might just be mine.
Yeah.
So when you think about all these kind of things, do you feel like when we become more adult, become more independent because we're allowed to make our own choices, and we think that plays into the part of why people become more successful as they get older, because they actually become more successful for them versus somebody else, and there's a whole heap of like letting go of the past and then letting go of the societal norms as you get older, because you're more independent and you realize that you can live how you want to live, and the world keeps spinning. But when you're younger, you don't really realize that. So is there a way that you can, this is completely off track to be fair, but is there a way that you could like help people out, help people kind of say, look, you can live how you want to live younger and still feel like you're not in the way, or feel like you're, doing something that's too different from everybody else? So what would your advice be?
I think it's very simple, and I tell people this all the time, and I wish I would have learned this earlier. In my probably 34 to 36, like my mid 30s, I just stopped caring what other people thought. And that's really it's as simple as that, because no one really gives a shit about what you're doing. Like no one really cares that much about you, but we're so egocentric as people. We get caught up in what are people going to judge me? What are they going to think? Who cares? Do what you want. I wish I can go back and tell my 25-year-old self that simple statement. What all these people think doesn't matter, because they're not really thinking about you. If I would have known that at 25, I'd be light years ahead of where I am right now. I didn't give myself that permission until I was in my mid-30s. And I had already chosen a career path and put a lot of things in place and built my family and got married and done those things. If I'd have known that at 25, my life might be completely different.
Do you think there are people, this is going to be again off track,
No,
but
it's
do you think
fine.
that there are people out there that are aware of this? So, I mean, we're getting into the realm of politics now, so I do
Yeah.
apologize. But do you
No,
think
no.
that there are people out there that are aware of the fact that our brains don't fully develop until we're mid-20s, which means as much as they can do to control our behavior before then is going to play a big part in the way that we act. And then we're allowed to have kids when we're 16 or younger, depending on where you
Hmm.
live, and 18 in the US, I think it is.
Yep.
And and then it's like, well, then we can get jobs and everything before we're actually capable of making decisions in the way that we want to make them, which means they've got this element of control and influence over the way we behave that,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a piece of me that thinks they're aware of all this and they're using this to their advantage. What do you think?
No, I would agree with you. I mean, it's an interesting topic, and I would agree, because I think it's, there's that, natural progression we go through in brain development in the way things are. And I think you're right. There are a lot of societal norms and rules put in place to keep your thumb down and control in a certain aspect. But I look at it as, if you can break the chain, or break, that it's just that it's that thing of, it doesn't matter what other people think. Like, that's the hardest thing for people to do, because we're trained a certain way, right? We're trained to be judged by others. We get grades in school. We're told to do certain things. We're reprimanded by teachers and parents. So those opinions of these other people matter because they steer our life. But then once we're set out into adulthood, we're still following those norms in our head, even though we shouldn't, because we have to live the way we want to live. But no one tells us otherwise. And that's where I think the problem comes from, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate to have, isn't it? Because there are
Yeah.
people listening that are like, oh, so I'm part of the problem. And the truth is that you could very well be, but that means that you could be part of the solution as well. Like, you've got this
Exactly.
element of, like, if you started it, then you can stop it. Be very,
Yep.
very aware of what you tell people. Be very, very aware of, like, how you communicate. Be very aware of what's going on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the amount, because I used to be a tennis coach,
Yeah.
and when I would speak to the kids, it was always about, okay, well, what would you rather do? Like, where would you want to hit the ball? Like, how would you want to put the racket? And when some people would say to me, was that any good? I would go, well, did you think it was good? And
Yeah.
there's just little tweaks in the way that you do it. But the problem is at first, this was quite funny, by the way, funny story. At
Mm-hmm.
first, the kids would be like, no, you tell me. Like, tell me, was it good? Coach, was that any good?
Right.
And it was like, well, for a start, it doesn't really matter, because if you grow to be better than me at tennis, then I've done my job.
Right.
So whether I think it's good doesn't matter, because if you want to actually be good at tennis, you're going to have to be better than me at some point.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time when you can hit the ball a heck of a lot better than me. So
Yep.
you've got to meet your own standards. Otherwise, you're never going to actually want to get better, because I'm going to always tell you that it was okay.
Yep.
And the problem with okay is you never get amazing. But if I tell you, are you happy with it? And you go, yeah, that was all right, but maybe I could do this better. Maybe I could do that better. That's your blueprint for getting better, but it's yours, versus me telling
Exactly.
you, well, oh, maybe you should do that. But the thing is, and I have this question a lot with people that are struggling, because
Mm-hmm.
people that are struggling want to be told.
Yeah, that's
the
exactly right.
people the people that are in that position whereby they're suffering, they're struggling, nothing's improving, they're failing all the time, they're spending so long in like the gray area versus trying to dive into something. And it's like, those are the people that not only want to be told, but they're also the people that actually need to listen to themselves more than other people.
That's exactly right.
And I think that when you think about it, like the intention behind it matters a lot. Like, again, I bring the tennis up again, but like, how do I know if it was good, if it was bad? Because if
Mm-hmm.
it did what you wanted it to do, then that's enough. Like,
Right.
why would I want to tell you it wasn't good, even though it ticked all your boxes?
Right. And everybody looks for that third party validation, that outside validation. They want
Yeah.
someone else to tell them it was good. When I've been trying to do that with my kids, right? If they say, do you like this picture? I'm like, well, do you like it?
Yeah.
Do you like it? Tell me why you like it. And then, you kind of get people to judge themselves, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels a different type of criticism if it comes from yourself. It feels like a very different conversation if it does come from within. And it's weird because we're also telling people to not believe everything that we think.
Yep.
And which is, I guess, true, but it depends on how helpful the thought is. Like if you go, oh, it wasn't quite good, the lighting wasn't quite right. It's like, right, well, just change the light and the conversation goes away. Like it doesn't get very complicated unless you start bringing in other people. When other people start giving you different information than what you're thinking yourself,
Yep.
that's when things start to get confusing in my mind. And I think sometimes the only way to know any of this, which for certain, is to fail.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And it kind of all circles back to that.
All goes full circle. It's great how things work out, isn't it, Rocco? It's great
absolutely.
how things always pan out. We're just about the right time before we start to finish. Go, oh, okay, bring up failure again. Well, that was a nice transition, wasn't it? That was amazing.
It was perfect.
Oh, I hate that word. Oh, I hate that word. So yeah, when it all pans out, like it's like a very dangerous spiral, isn't it? It's something that. Like if you never fail, then you never know what to improve on. Therefore, you look for other people to tell you what to improve on because you've never actually acknowledged the fact that you've not done something as well as you could have. Exactly. And it's like the only way of actually improving and actually having a positive spiral is to actually listen to yourself first. And if you can use other people to connect the dots if you want, but the dots have to come from yourself, I think, before you can actually do something constructive with it.
No, I completely agree.
I did think the pause was you either thinking about it, Rocco, or like, no, it's fine. No, yeah, keep going. One of the things that does strike me as well is this is something that you've had a lot of practice at. You've had a lot of practice at the failures, at the the learning process, if you will, from those failures. Have you managed to break it down into certain steps for us? If you managed to turn around and go, actually, there is a step process that you can go through as a way of using failure and actually making the most of it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned is when you have I think what happens with people when it comes to failure, one or two things happen. They let it hold them back or they grow from it. And I think the majority of people let it hold them back. They look at it from the negative standpoint. I always say, take a moment and reflect on it. When you take a few days and reflect on the failure, that's where you pull the most lessons from that failure. But a lot of people don't take the time to do that. They let it frustrate them, stress them out, or stop them dead in their tracks. You have to first shift your mindset to say, it's part of the process, failure's learning, and then take that step back and reflect. And when I say reflect, I say look at every piece to that process, that thing, from the beginning to the middle through the end. How did the thing start? What happened in the middle? Where, you really got to break it down into every step of the way to start identifying the lessons. Because if you just look and say, I made a bad business deal, okay, well, why was it bad? Was it the people? Was it the price? Was it the process? Was it the product? What about it was bad? What could have changed? What variable could you have introduced to give you a different result? But it's hard work to do that. That's why people don't always do it. They just look at it and just get mad, angry, frustrated, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You got to take that time in the recency of it, like when it happens, to reflect. That's how you pull. That's the process I use. That's worked for me tremendously.
Is there an element of doing it straight afterwards as well? I mean, does that have an effect on the process? Does it affect the answers that you give? Because we all know memory is not very helpful. So how does the timing play into like the ability to do this?
Well, I think you have to do it very soon thereafter because everything's recent in your head and the emotion is still there. So I think when you channel that emotion in the proper way as part of the learning process, you take more out of that failure. The problem is people let the emotion eat away at them for days and then maybe think about it a few weeks later and then they miss all the lessons. When you're in the emotional state that the failure creates, but you take the moment to reflect and look at the positive learning lessons from it, coupled with the emotional state, that's the powerful technique that allows you to extract the information you need to grow and progress.
Yeah, I feel like the emotion also helps with the learning as well, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
helps with
absolutely.
trying to cement it in. Do you ever find that if people don't go through this, they could take the wrong thing from their experiences as well? Like they've got this like disconnect because they get all emotional and they make things mean certain things in their own head without actually questioning them, and then the
Yep,
emotion embeds it in, and it's too late by then, and then that's it.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's some people just do it the wrong way, and they let the emotion eat away at them, and they do create that disconnect. And it's like, and I've been with clients or with friends that have had those failures where they were disconnected. But if I look at it, I'm like, well, here's what I see you could have learned from it. And then sometimes it takes that third party to say, yeah, well, I see this, this, and this. And like, because they weren't looking at it objectively. They let the emotion overtake their brain. And it's got to be part of the process, but not the entire process.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you ever feel like this is a lot of push and pull, isn't it? This is a lot of like meeting in the middle. This is a lot
Yeah.
of making sure that you do it right versus wrong, but then being pulled in the opposite direction by culture or whatever it is. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like we just need to feel good about failing again. We need to
Yeah.
feel good about making mistakes, but we also need to feel good about, okay, once you've made the mistake, this is the process of making sure that you don't connect the dots in the wrong order or connect them in the wrong way,
Yep.
and then you actually take the right thing from your experience that you can then learn from it. And I think that because of your experience with psychology and as a lawyer and all those things, you're in a very unique position to be able to do that for yourself. And I think being able to at least show others how to do
Yep.
it or take others through the process is something that I think you've taken full advantage of. And I just want to say, you're in a unique place. And I think that it's worth listening to you on this topic because of your experience and where you've come from as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely it's just a journey I've been on, and I continue to learn more and more. And if I can share and help anybody out, that's that's the whole goal in life.
Of course it is, definitely. I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about you, mate, where can people go? So your chance to share
Yeah.
websites or your podcast maybe or social media, like where do you like to hang out most?
Yeah, so you can my website is just Rocco Cozza, ROCCOCOZZA.com. That's my personal website, my speaking engagements. You can find a lot of my media on there. I'm very active on Instagram. My username there is the Rocco Cozza. My podcast is called the It's Work Podcast. It's been on a 2-month hiatus, so I'm going to reboot it in August. So I've taken a little break from it. So I'm going to reboot some different types of episodes coming in August. So I haven't had a few episodes up since I think April is when I stopped it for May, June, and July. I'm taking a 3-month break, but it'll be rebooted in August with some different type of content. So yeah, I mean, those are the places you can find me. I am on Facebook and Twitter, and those are the same username, the Rocco Cozza, but I'm most active on Instagram on social media.
All right, awesome. We've got one last question for you.
Yeah.
And hopefully we get a very, very good answer considering what we've been talking about today. Is what would you want everyone to know about you that they might not know already?
That's a good that's a good question. What I would like people to know about me that they may not know about me already. I mean, for speaking about failure, I've failed more times than I can count. And a lot of people don't know that about me. It's because I don't, people just assume a certain thing, but
Yeah.
I've made more mistakes and failures than probably anybody I know, but that's what keeps me going. That's what motivates me. And I love to cook and I love to read. So those are 2 other things about me.
I appreciate you taking the time, and then I really, really hope we keep in touch. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I really appreciate it.